What is up, everybody? This is Chase, and welcome back to the Wellness Center podcast, where we are destigmatizing mental health one episode at a time. Everyone, I am so grateful that you guys have tuned in again to yet another story of resilience, vulnerability, trials, struggles, thriving, lessons, hope, encouragement, and all the wonderful things that we share on this podcast every single Friday. I want to make sure you guys have some awesome stories and some awesome skills that you can take into the weekend to help you cope. So, guys, again, I'm just so grateful for you. I hope everyone is having a great week so far. They've had a great week so far, and they're really looking forward to this weekend. I know I am. It's going to be a fun time. I've got Saturday off for the first time in forever, so I'm going to go and spend it with my family. Hopefully, we're going to get up in nature, get into the mountains, or just do something to do some grounding, just to kind of help alleviate the tension from the world and life, because life is a fun mess sometimes. Um, Guys, as you're listening to this, if you're not a part of the Wellness Center tribe, please make sure to subscribe, especially if you're watching on YouTube. If you are a part of, or you're listening, I apologize, on Apple or Spotify or another podcasting platform, please make sure to hit that follow button, that download button. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review as well, just to let us know how much you love the show, how much you love us, how much you're going to love this conversation today with our guest. Because, guys, let me tell you, this lady is phenomenal. Her credentials are some of the best that I've ever had on the show. So we're going to get some real good stuff here, some real true information. She's put in the time and she's willing to share it. So I'm so grateful for her. So guys, yeah, again, please make sure to like and subscribe. And I want to invite you as well, as you're listening to the show today, everybody. I want you to be thinking of somebody that you know is going to benefit from the lessons taught today, something that rings true for one of your friends or your family member. And I invite you to share this with them, to share this episode with them. Not only is that going to let them know that you love and care about them and that you were thinking about them, but that you're also providing them something so valuable, because the story today is going to be so incredibly valuable. Just even in the few minutes I've been talking to my guest, like I'm really, really excited for the conversation today. Um, so, guys, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my awesome guest. So, by way of epic introduction, guys, our guest today is a board certified clinical pharmacist and works for the Mayo Clinic as a certified wellness coach as well. She has a doctorate in pharmacy from Roseman University and PGY1 residency at the University of New Mexico Hospitals. I'm going to butcher this. So, she is certified in nutrition coaching, medication therapy management, and genomics. She's giving me a nod of approval, so we're good there. She is an inpatient clinical pharmacist at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. She did that for 7 years, and she's also a public speaker, an entrepreneur, and a CEO of Whole and Happy Living. It's focused on health coaching, and education. So without further ado, we have the one, the only, the very well-educated Whitney Prude on the show today. Whitney, how are you doing?
Hear the legends old and new. Wisdom flow like rivers true. Share your heart, the stories thrive. In this cast we're all alive. Oh.
Hi, Chase. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm doing well.
Good.
Happy and excited for this conversation. So
Good. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. And I am so grateful for your time. Obviously, with that epic introduction, I know you've got a lot on your plate. Taking an hour out of your day to come have a really cool conversation about you, I'm just really excited for it. So, yeah, it's going to be good. So, Whitney, if you could just give us some cookie cutter answers about like who you are, what you like to do, so we can just get to know you a little bit better, that'd be great.
sure. Cookie cutter answers. Well, aside from what I do, right, it's like I'm a pharmacist and I run my own business, really focused on holistic weight loss. We're really trying to help people to get long-term weight loss and really change themselves from the inside out. But me on a personal level, I'm sure I'll be sharing some of my story today, but my life is not at all what I expected it to be right now. And so my hobbies, have completely changed from what they used to be. I used to, love sports and be incredibly active, and now, my body doesn't let me do quite the same things that I used to
Mm.
be able to do. So one of the things that I absolutely love is bunny rabbits. I always have my
Okay.
entire life, so this is one of my favorite things. But I have three little bunnies that make me so happy. That's probably my most favorite thing to do, is to
Okay.
spend time with my little rabbits. And um, yeah. Anyways, I mean, I love to read. I love to work on my business. I love to help others. Really to be able to live their absolute best lives. I mean, it's incredibly fulfilling. So
That's super cool. And I love a life of service, right? The certifications that I read off in your introduction speak to that perfectly. I'm curious about the bunnies though.
yeah.
So what kind of like, I'm not super familiar with like bunnies. So I mean, we're already going to get into some cool information here. I know the term Holland Lop is the
Mhm.
bunnies with the floppy ears.
Yeah.
Do you have Holland Lops, or I'm assuming there's other kinds of bunnies?
Yeah, so I actually just got two little boys that are Holland Lops.
Oh,
So
okay.
so that took me up to three. I have
Okay.
three rabbits. But my rabbit that I've had for about 5 years, she's a Netherland dwarf, so about 2.5 pounds full grown. They're
Oh,
they're all pretty small, and I don't know, I just like the small little
yeah.
breeds.
Are they more of like emotional support animal kind of bunnies? Are they just a hobby that you love? Do you breed them?
I've always had a dream of breeding rabbits.
Okay.
I've not been able to do it yet,
Okay.
but I'm always thinking about it.
That
I'm always thinking about, at what point do I actually get to breed rabbits? Right now,
yeah.
they're just pets.
Right.
I mean, emotional support. I think every animal is an emotional support
Right.
animal, right? If it's your pet and best friend. So,
Absolutely.
yes, it's just I don't know why. I have always loved rabbits since I was a really, really little girl. And people are always like, "Oh, you're such an animal person." And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just a rabbit
You
person."
just wrap it.
I
That's all.
absolutely love rabbits. They make me so happy just watching them. They're so cute. They hop
They
around. Oh
are.
my gosh.
They're
I can't get enough.
adorable. They rabbits. I agree with you wholeheartedly. So I'm curious. So I had rabbits growing up as well. I grew up on a farm, and the rabbits were always outside pets for us, right? Because they were really, really stinky.
Mhm.
I mean, ours were at least. I'm not saying yours are, but like, are they inside rabbits? Are they outside rabbits?
My Netherland dwarf that I've had for 5 years, she's always been indoors.
Cool.
She's pretty much litter box trained, so it makes it easy that they're not like making my whole house stink. It's just she goes in a litter box, and then you switch out the litter box. So
So
um,
how do you train a rabbit to go in?
they train themselves.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
essentially they choose a spot, right? And
Gotcha.
that spot becomes where they go to the bathroom, and you
Okay,
put the litter
cool.
box there. So
Okay, super cool. So you've loved them your whole life. What kind of was like the catalyst 5 years ago to get a bunny?
oh boy. Well, I had had rabbits, I mean, most of my life up until college. And
Mhm.
then in college, it was too difficult. So I didn't have a rabbit while I was in college.
Yeah.
Um, and then I wasn't able to get another one until I actually had a house, because most apartments and different things like that, you can't have a
Right.
pet.
One or two
So
animals max with really
if
hefty
even,
fees. Yeah.
yeah. So quite honestly, once I got married, I just kept, bugging my husband, like, I want a rabbit, I want a rabbit, I want a rabbit. And he's like, you can get a rabbit when you can actually take care of it. And the reason that I say that is just because my health tanked
Mhm.
several years ago with an
Gotcha.
autoimmune disease. And so
Okay.
really I didn't even hardly have the energy to be able to take care of myself. And so that was
Yeah.
kind of his that's where his comment comes from, of like, when you have the energy to actually like take care of this rabbit,
Yeah, that
um
makes sense.
then
And
sure. So
so in this autoimmune, is this kind of, I know you also mentioned in some of your cookie cutter answers that you are really passionate about helping people with weight loss. Do you feel like the autoimmune kind of that. And I'm familiar with some autoimmune immunes, not all of them, but do you feel like that kind of the weight loss, the passion for that went hand in hand with whatever that autoimmune disease you were working with, or is there any connection there?
I mean, there is a connection, and it's more along the lines of helping people to avoid the pitfalls of not taking care of themselves.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of, I mean, to give you a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah.
Um, so when I was 16,
Hmm.
my parents got divorced.
Mm.
And for me at that point, I mean, it was absolutely devastating.
Right.
We'd always had, just a great family, and everything was fine, right? And then
Yeah.
at 16, at the hardest time of life, right, as a teenager, and you're
High
already
school. Yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
So my parents going through a divorce at that point was very, very devastating. I mean, relationships crumbled, and just a lot of things went haywire, for me, but I didn't realize it.
Gotcha.
I've always been a very optimistic person,
Hmm.
very strong-willed and resilient, and so, I mean, what do I do? Well, I do what every human does, and you shove down the pain and the hurt, and you try to figure out how to survive, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, I absolutely did that. I would have told you that, like, I was perfectly fine,
Hmm.
and that I was happy and everything was honky dory, and that wasn't actually the case. And
Yeah.
so my first realization that that wasn't the case was actually once I got into pharmacy school.
Okay.
So I got into pharmacy school, and I got through, about my first year, and I mean, it was it's like it's so overwhelming. It's like beyond what humans should be able to, like,
Comprehend.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's almost, it's like it's almost like it's built to destroy you. Um, but
Break you
essentially, I
down to
mean,
build you back up. It's military
yeah,
camp, right?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I got to the point where I did have just like a complete breakdown.
Gotcha.
And one day I came home from class. We'd been in class 8 hours. I had so much studying to do. I was like a walking zombie at that point. I felt
Yeah.
completely numb. But just this day in particular, I mean, I got home, and before I could even make it to my bed, I just completely crumbled. Like, I
Mm.
crumbled onto the floor, and I just laid there like in the fetal position, and I sobbed and I sobbed and I
Mm.
sobbed. And I mean, I don't quite honestly, I don't even know how long I was there. I was just like, just like the
The
devastating sobs.
the deep down box was coming out.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yep.
And in that moment, when I finally kind of pulled myself together is
Yeah.
really when I realized, and I was willing to accept for the first time, like, well, gosh, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and it really wasn't pharmacy at all. Pharmacy pushed me to my limits,
Hmm.
right? Pushed me past my limits of
Hmm.
being able to cover everything up.
Gotcha.
So I no longer had the strength and the capacity, the ability to be able to cover up everything that I was hiding.
Gotcha. That
And so
makes
at that
sense.
point, I started to realize, hey, you know what? This isn't pharmacy. This is the devastation of the divorce, of lost relationships, of loneliness, of, abandoning myself, of feeling abandoned,
Yeah.
hurt by people that were so close to me. Um, Codependency, there's all sorts of things that come along with going through
Absolutely.
those types of challenges in life. But ultimately, that was my moment where I was like, gosh, like, I have to actually at this point accept that I'm not okay and I'm not rising
Yeah.
to this, and I
Okay.
actually have to do something.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to share that. I can imagine that was, I mean, at the time still now is something that you've had to wrestle with. So thank you for your bravery to share that and your
Yeah.
vulnerability. So I'm curious, just one question that came to mind about actually going to pharmacy school. So I know pharmacy school isn't like your associate's degree, your bachelor's degree. Is that something that happens after you get a master's degree, or pharmacy school, how does that
It is a
work?
doctorate.
Is
It is a
doctorate?
doctorate. Yeah, but
Okay.
it's not necessarily that you have to go, like, up through a master's and then get a doctorate. usually.
Gotcha.
It's like you're getting an associate's or a bachelor's, you have to get all of the prerequisites.
Okay.
And then you have to, interview, apply, take an entrance exam and all of
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. And then you get accepted. So,
Okay. And so that was after kind of your bachelor's degree.
mhm.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think there's a lot there that I would love to talk about. I also think that there's some stuff that happened earlier in your life that I would love to talk about as well. So I want to formally bring in the first question, right? So Whitney,
Sure.
take us back to a young Whitney Prude. When did you first start struggling with your mental health?
I mean, I think, quite honestly, I think it really was like as a teenager.
Was the
Um,
divorce? Yeah.
I I don't think earlier in my life. I mean, there were things, and it's like my parents' relationship wasn't always the greatest.
Hmm.
We knew that there were times when they were fighting, but really and truly, like I had a pretty good childhood. I
Yeah.
really did. And there's I didn't go without anything. It just
Right.
I really didn't struggle until life happened. And
Yeah.
my parents divorced, and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, life isn't what I always thought that it was going to be or what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that makes
And so
sense.
that really was the turning point when I really started to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout your parents' divorce, was there a messy middle where your parents were fighting and they were pitting like you and if I don't know if you have any siblings or not, but if they were pitting you against each other or was it kind of an amicable divorce? What was kind of your view of that divorce?
I mean, there's two sides to every story,
Right.
right? So, I mean, me and my siblings, we were all in different places. My older
Gotcha.
sister was out of the house, so she wasn't there.
Hmm.
But she did experience some things, when she was home and when she
Right.
was younger. So, but she was out of the house, and so she got a story, and then my older brother, he wasn't home as much. He was, older and later in high school, and so he had his perception, and then
Hmm.
I had my perception, and I was always very close to my mom and a very, very strong supporter of my mom, and so I was with her every step of the way, and I was seeing what she was going through, what
Right.
she was struggling with, and I took the stance of being a strength and support for her. And
Hmm.
then I had my younger brother, and he was 5 years younger than me. So he was 10, 11 at the
Hmm.
time. And I I also kind of took a role of protecting him, of,
Gotcha.
that he just didn't have to be in the middle of all of it. Like he was too young. When
Yeah.
you're older, when you're a teenager and you're old and older than that, you do get stuck in the middle of it. And of
Hmm.
course, I mean, no, my parents had no intentions of hurting anyone or, making it. Nobody intentionally
Right.
does all of these things, right? You're just
Right.
going through this experience, and
Hmm.
you feel passionately about your side or whatever and try to persuade people, absolutely. But um so my older siblings more supported my dad, and so it
Hmm.
created a barrier there. I of course supported my mom, and my little brother was too young, and so
Yeah.
he was just he was with me and my mom, and so it ended up being eventually me and my mom and my little brother, the three of us, going through a lot of life together,
Yeah.
um, and fighting through a lot of those challenges. So yeah, I mean, there's no easy way through it, and there's no
Right.
perfect way through it, and yeah, it was heart wrenching. It was incredibly challenging.
Yeah. And to speak this, I know that you were all just trying to do your best, right?
Absolutely.
We as humans are. And oh man. So you kind of you take on this role as a protector and a caretaker, right? And that makes sense, right? Looking at a lot of what you're doing with your life now, right? Do you feel like the desire to care for other people stemmed from that divorce, or did you have those desires from a younger age?
That's an interesting question. So, um, I always had a passion to make a difference in the world. I always wanted to be a speaker, and like in my community and at church and those types of things. When I would get the opportunity to speak, like I'd put, it was like as a young person, I'd put together like a pretty powerful speech.
Okay.
And and so I always had this desire inside of me to make a difference. And I didn't know what that difference was. I've just always had a passion of in some way, shape, or form making a difference in the world, right? And as
Hmm.
I go through life, that shifts and changes, and but the passion is always there.
Okay.
But in conjunction with the divorce, so this brings to light a mental health aspect
Hmm.
where so and I help people a lot in with these things in my program even.
Hmm.
um, when in terms of going through like my parents' divorce and those sorts of things, I mean, a lot of times we develop mechanisms for meeting the needs that we don't feel like are being met.
Right.
Right. And we all do it. That's human nature, right? So if
Hmm.
we don't feel loved, or if we don't feel like our emotional needs are met, or if we're constantly being put down, or we can't ever do anything good enough, right? Then we
Hmm.
start to compensate. We try to start to find ways to fill the void that's inside of us.
Right.
When I went through my parents' divorce, what I started noticing after a while of like these breakdowns and types of things is that I had a sense of abandonment, being abandoned by people that I loved,
Hmm.
also abandoning myself, but in a sense of being abandoned by people that I loved, what I did to try and compensate to feel needed
Hmm.
was that I would over serve other people. So
Gotcha.
I would have like my friends, and I would like seriously like the best friend that you could ever have, but even to an extreme degree, to a point where it actually became too much. It was too
Yeah.
much. For them
Gotcha.
it seemed like too much, and for me, you know, I'm like, give me more. Like I'm trying to fill a void inside
Right.
of myself. So what I actually started doing is I started showing up for other people and trying to build really close relationships with friends and with other people, because I was trying to compensate for my loss,
Yeah.
actually.
That,
And it was very unhealthy. And even when I look back and the things that I did, and things with my friends and stuff, like I I'm still embarrassed. I'm still uncomfortable about like the way that I was acting, but I was doing the best that I could in the situation that I was in. I was trying to get my needs met.
yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to share it. Yeah, I think there's a lot to speak to regarding like looking back, right, at some of the decisions we made as teenagers and young adults, and just kind of like shaking our heads while still honoring the fact that we're human,
Yeah.
right? And there's that messy middle of being a teenager. That's just so much fun. Okay, so you start, you learn to caretake and you really start to serve other people, which super awesome skills, right? I know you mentioned, and kind of in my own words, it got to a place where it felt inauthentic, right? Where you're kind of stepping away from yourself because you needed the validation so much. Did that continue up until, or even after that breaking point you had in pharmaceutical school?
So that's where I had to start to change things. So
Okay,
at
yeah,
that's when I realized, like, gosh, I'm like not
yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
Um,
Which, and really quick before you get into that, I think this is the absolutely the perfect segue into the second question, right? Which is the heroine's journey. So for those listening, the heroine's journey, guys, or the hero's journey is essentially an extreme moment, a pivotal trial, something that made, in this case, Whitney, have to shift the course of her life, right? She was called to do something bigger and better. So Whitney, please continue with your story, right? You're saying that you had this big breakdown, you realized you needed to make a shift. Then what?
yeah. I got help. I mean, I started going to therapy. I started reading every self-help book that I could possibly get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I started really paying attention to, the things that were really uncomfortable for me, things that I was protecting myself from, shielding my other people from like myself, of not really letting people see like my true inner self.
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, it was a long journey of finding myself, of developing genuine self-worth,
Yeah.
and allowing myself to not be busy, to just sit and be inside my own head and
Hmm.
take care of myself. Um, I mean, it was incredibly uncomfortable. It was so hard. It was so hard. And I would say it took me, probably that struggle of really working through those challenges probably took me a good 7 years until I got to a point where I really felt comfortable and at peace inside of myself.
I'm really appreciative that you said 7 years,
Yeah.
because I think especially in this world, right, that instant gratification mentality, to have some truth there, that it takes time, I think is really important.
Mhm.
So thank you for mentioning that. I'm curious about your education behind stepping into areas of discomfort, and kind of what your expertise is on that, your experience with that, what you know
Yeah. Yeah.
about that specifically.
I mean, it's the journey of change,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So, I mean, in my program that I take people through, it's a huge focus
Hmm.
of what we have to do in order to change.
Hmm.
And a lot of times when we're thinking about change, but we don't know what to do, I usually will instruct people to start paying attention to the moments in your life where you're uncomfortable. So that could be, you're talking to a close friend, or you're talking to a parent or something, and you get to a moment where you feel uncomfortable sharing something, or you might walk into a social setting and all of a sudden you're uncomfortable for whatever reasons, right? Or it could be any number of things.
Hmm.
um, but your your body and your mind actually tells you where the things are that you need to work on, because
Hmm.
once you get once you hit it, right, you're trying to protect yourself from it.
Right.
Once you get there, it becomes incredibly uncomfortable. And so really and truly, the process of change is starting to push yourself through those barriers of discomfort.
I love
You have
that.
to start working into those,
Yeah.
and facing the discomfort if you ever want to change.
Yeah. Do you think, I know, so absolutely there's a level of discomfort that's healthy. Do you think people, right? Because so for me, for example, I'm kind of an extreme thinker in a way, where it's like, oh, level of discomfort. All right, what's the biggest and most discomfort that I can handle as a human being, right? To create the most effective change. Do you feel like there's a level of discomfort that people can put themselves into for change that's unhealthy, that's not good for actual progression?
I would say it depends on where your mental health is.
Okay.
For example, like people that have like extreme anxiety or extreme depression, or they
Hmm.
have PTSD, they've had past trauma.
Hmm.
Those individuals, that's a different level. It's a
Gotcha.
different level. So, um, yeah, you can push yourself into a situation where you have a panic attack. You can push yourself into a situation where, you push yourself into a severe depression, or to where you trigger, PTSD symptoms, right?
Yeah.
So are there instances where you can push yourself too hard? Yeah. And in those instances, right, you should be working with someone.
Gotcha.
That's not a journey you should be doing on your own if
Right.
you have those extreme cases and those extreme situations. And so those types of people, if they do come through my program, of course we'll work with them. But if there is extreme trauma or different things like that, we want you to be working with a therapist as well, who's very trained in working in those extreme circumstances. But
Right.
the majority of the population that doesn't have PTSD or doesn't get panic attacks from being uncomfortable,
Hmm.
then I don't know that there's really a limit. If you're not forcing yourself into something that actually puts your health at risk,
Right.
right? Then the discomfort, the more uncomfortable you get and the more you sit in it, the quicker you make change happen.
That's interesting. No, it's cool. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Do you do you feel like there are some common early signs that someone might be pushing themselves too hard? That maybe so like if someone's listening to this, maybe like are they starting to sweat? Are they getting too nervous? Like if there are, I would love to know if there are any signs that you're aware of.
I would say the most detrimental is the person that's listening to this and saying, that's not me.
Mm, okay. Expand on that.
I mean, that's what I did for however many years,
Right.
you know? No, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm healthy. I'm happy. It's almost like you shove everything down,
Hmm.
and you float above. It's like you're on this cloud that
Right.
everything's happy and healthy, and sometimes, we're overly optimistic that everything is honky dory and we're doing really well. And typically those people, and I get these people in my program all the time, typically those people are people that keep themselves incredibly busy.
Mm,
And the reason that you stay busy is because you're uncomfortable not being busy. And the reason you're uncomfortable not being busy is because it gives you time with yourself. It gives you
hmm
time with your emotions. It gives you time to realize like where you're at and what's
hmm
going on and allow some of those things to come up. So the majority of people keep themselves busy where like if like talking to someone in that type of a scenario, if I were to say schedule 30 minutes on your calendar where there's literally nothing, where you sit and do absolutely nothing, and for those people it will immediately become uncomfortable, like right now just hearing that,
hmm
of like literally sitting and doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, there's a call to action for you listeners. If you're feeling uncomfortable, you should probably schedule some 30 minutes.
Nah.
Sit and be still.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to force yourself into the discomfort, and you have to sit in it. But I think busyness, people pleasing,
Hmm.
excessive busyness, perfectionism, those are overachieving.
Hmm.
Those are the really big signs of um, you're covering up
Hmm.
what's deeper inside of you. You're
Yeah.
filling a void, and you're avoiding all of the pain that you've buried and pushed down and think that you're fine.
So, as a practice of sitting and being still for 30 minutes a day with nothing going on, how often should people do that? And how important is it that they do that or something similar to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. If it's really uncomfortable, start with 5 minutes, because 30 minutes is going to seem too big and they're not going to do it.
Hmm.
5 minutes, 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes, and then increase to 10 and increase to 20 and increase to 30. And I'll tell you, when I started to like spend time with myself, like it was awful, awful.
Right.
Seriously. It was so uncomfortable. I felt guilty. I felt like I should be doing something else. I don't know, it just felt yucky. I didn't know how to be there. I didn't know how to be there in that space.
Hmm.
Now I can sit all day long and not do a darn thing and it wouldn't matter. Don't care.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
No.
No, that's an amazing skill to develop.
Yeah.
Um, so you did talk therapy. What were some of the other like things that you did throughout your heroine's journey that you felt were very pivotal for you?
The most powerful thing that I did
Hmm.
is an exercise that I try to get all of my clients to do.
Okay.
And it's really so I would say probably 99% of the population
Hmm.
lacks genuine self-love.
Okay.
Okay. Most people don't really know what self-love actually is. We
Okay.
think of self-care,
Hmm.
That self-care is different. Those are physical things that you're doing for yourself, which it can be a component of self-love, but it's not self-love.
Okay.
Self-care is not self-love, right? So self-love is when you actually start showing up for yourself emotionally.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a much deeper level, right?
Okay.
So for example, this exercise that really changed the game for me um, was an exercise called a big little exercise. And I learned about it in therapy, but I also read about it in a book called The Journey from Abandonment to Healing.
Okay.
And the way that this exercise works is you can use it in the present or you can use it in the past. So for
Hmm.
example, if you're going back to a past experience, you close your eyes, you visualize yourself going back into that experience, and you visualize your younger self
Hmm.
going through that experience. But then you take your older self
Hmm.
with you.
Okay.
Okay. So now you're taking your older self with you and you're starting to ask your younger self questions, and you say, gosh, hey, like, why are you sad? Why are you crying? What's going on?
Hmm.
You allow your younger self to start expressing
Hmm.
how they feel and how scared they are and how sad they are and
Hmm.
just what's going on. And then your role as the older self is to comfort yourself, your younger self, show up.
Yeah.
Hey, gosh, it's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. I'm so sorry that, like, you don't feel loved, that they're not, that people aren't showing up for you, that whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And then you express, love and support for yourself, understanding, right? You tell
Yeah.
yourself that you love you, I love you, right? Give
Hmm.
your younger self a big hug, and you start actually developing a relationship with yourself. And the reality is that the majority of people that actually try to do this exercise, they'll get to their younger self and they'll say, hey, what's going on? What's making you sad? And their younger self will say what's making them sad.
Hmm.
And then we don't know what to do. The older one doesn't know what to do. And it's like,
Okay.
okay, if that was your child, what would you do? And all of a sudden they know exactly how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Get down on a knee, give them a hug, tell them it's okay, tell them you love them.
Yep. But we
Yes.
don't know how to do that for ourselves.
Right. That sounds so similar. There's a book I've read once called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by
Okay.
Deborah Ford.
Yeah.
And very, very similar to what you do. It's kind of like parts work as well. But you go into this deep meditation and you meet your shadow self, right? All of those hard hurt parts, and you
Yeah.
just learn to love and embrace that part of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And similar. So
Hmm.
similar in that you're going in and you're processing, you're accepting,
Hmm.
that's a lot of like self-acceptance
Yeah.
and genuinely being able to accept that that is a part of you and being able to love that as a part of you.
Yeah. Which, yeah, it's so unique to love those, like learning to love those parts of you that hurt, right? Those traumas, those icky moments, the parts in the messy middle
Yep.
is is so important. I'm curious too. I feel like in my personal life, so I know other people will attest to this, is that you feel like you should be able to go in a couple of times, talk to your young self a couple of times, and then you're good, right? But if you think about building and creating health, and so you giggle, like, or laugh, but like building a healthy relationship with someone requires consistent work. So how often do you feel people should be going and talking to their younger selves or dealing with those emotions, right? This meditation you're talking about, or this thought process that people go through, how often should people actually be doing that?
As often as it comes up. And what I mean by that is, well, so first of all, if you're trying to process things in your past, and I
Hmm.
mean, giving a caveat to this is like if someone does have PTSD, like don't
Hmm.
go back to your severe traumatic experiences, okay? And
Hmm.
it's like do that with a therapist, but
Right.
um in terms of going back, right? You have to go back to the experiences that are still causing you pain, the things that you haven't processed. So it's like there's a section in my program that I do, and it's called the price of freedom. And the price of freedom is pain. And the
Hmm.
reason that the price of freedom is pain is because you actually have to feel the hurt.
Hmm.
You have to let yourself feel. You've been shoving it down, avoiding it, trying to move on, trying to overachieve, trying to find ways to fill a void without actually allowing yourself to feel the feelings and to
Hmm.
feel validated and understood. And so if you're going into the past, then the number of times you need to do it is, well, you have to do it for all of the experiences that are bogging you down, that are, that you're holding inside of yourself. And for each of those experiences, you need to do it multiple times because the first time that you go back and do it is going to be incredibly emotional.
Right.
Second time, it's not going to be as emotional. The third, a little less. You go back a fourth time, probably not much emotion attached to it.
Hmm.
And at that point, right, you've processed that.
This sounds very similar to EMDR therapy.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. So EMDR or ART is essentially like going back to a memory and removing the emotion connected to the memory.
Yeah.
Right. So no, that's awesome. Very, very awesome. We've been talking about skills and stuff, which is super cool. Do you feel like there are any other skills that you developed throughout the kind of the 7-year journey?
I mean, the biggest thing I would say that I developed is my self-love and my self-worth, my
Yeah.
ability to show up for myself. So like when you ask like how often does somebody need to do this exercise, right?
Hmm.
Well, if you're doing it in the present, right? It's like you
Hmm.
have a bunch of emotions coming up and
Hmm.
you can step aside and like do the exercise and talk yourself through it, right? And show
Hmm.
up for yourself in the moment. So then yeah, you're doing it anytime that emotion shows up. But eventually, as you've actually built that relationship with yourself, you don't have to do it anymore because those emotions aren't showing up anymore
Gotcha.
because you've worked through them and you've overcome them. And so you get to a point where you're very mentally and emotionally stable.
It's
And
amazing.
so I don't have to do the exercise anymore, and I really don't. I
Hmm.
don't do it anymore. I don't need to
Right.
because I've overcome all of those things that were causing all of the triggers and emotions and things that were challenging and that were throwing me off and that were,
Mhm.
so
And is this a skill that you used all 7 years of kind of this process you talk about, or?
I mean, I think I did it wasn't the only one, right? I mean,
Yeah.
learning how to do, like, meditation and
Hmm.
helping to, like, learn how to calm your mind. It's like, instead of your mind going a million miles an hour, like, let yourself just sit,
Yeah.
and be calm. So learning how to let your mind actually be calm so that you can just be present in life, that you're not always anxious about the future or worrying about the past or so I mean there's a lot of different skills.
Hmm.
But I mean ultimately the most important thing is realizing and recognizing that the number one person that I can show up for in my life is me.
Yeah.
And as like I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my health in order to be able to show up for everything else that I want to show up for.
Yeah.
So I mean I because of everything that I did, in
Hmm.
terms of, like, not taking care of myself, and my mental health eventually kind of took my body to a point where, I ended up diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Now,
Hmm.
whether that was just genetics, like, there are genetics, but
Hmm.
whether that would have happened, if I hadn't, if I was
Yeah.
actually, taking care of myself and addressing all the mental and emotional things, whether or not that would have happened, like I'll never know the answer to that, right?
Gotcha.
But but ultimately that's what all of this led me to, of like trying to stay busy, trying to overachieve, trying to do all of the things, right?
Yeah.
To be good enough in life, to be
Hmm.
worth something in life, right?
Hmm.
Essentially led me to losing my quality of life.
Right.
And so basically at that point I had to start all over again.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is that when I got sick, and it basically turned my life upside down.
Hmm.
That was not nearly as devastating as everything else that I had been through in the previous 7 years, because I had really healed myself.
Good.
So it was something that I, you know,
Hmm.
it wasn't something that, impacted my self-worth, because I already knew who I was.
Hmm.
It didn't mean that I was now a crappy individual that can't do anything in life and I'm worthless, because, because my physical capabilities have decreased so drastically,
Hmm.
right? I had learned those skills. I had filled my inner void, essentially,
Yeah.
and was very confident and secure in myself, and so it was just, it was the next life challenge. Doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't mean it wasn't hard and that there wasn't grief of losing my quality of life and those types of things, but ultimately that's the skill, right? of
Right.
of filling your own cup and showing up for yourself as number one,
Hmm.
and then, and then letting life filter in after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you sharing that. Obviously you're thriving at this point in your life, right? There is the human part of you, right, that still has the trials and the
Oh
struggles and
yeah.
all those things, and you're thriving at the same time. And I think that's so, so powerful. So thank you. Looking back at everything you've had to go through in your life, from the divorce and the false beliefs and all of the things and the 7 year struggles and the pains and the discomforts and even the autoimmune, all these things that you've had to go through or going through, what can you appreciate about your life?
All of it. All of it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I wouldn't be who I am,
Hmm.
without it. I mean, people ask me, if you could go back and change your life, like what would you change?
Right.
Um,
It's always a fun question to get, right?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it, right? Because it
Right.
would, if I went back and changed it, it would change who I am. It would
Hmm.
change, the person that I've been able to become. I wouldn't be able to help people in the same way. I wouldn't have the same level of understanding and compassion and empathy for other people,
Hmm.
and their struggles, and have the tools and the skills to be able to help them to overcome their own journeys. So I absolutely wouldn't change anything.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I, you know, would I love to have like my physical capabilities back? I would.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
100% I would. And, I do a lot of sales calls and sell like health programs and things. And, people are like, oh, $3,000 or, oh, 10,000, whatever. It's like people
Yeah.
sell, you know, any number of things. And it's like, well, gosh, if somebody came to me and said, hey, Whitney, if I could give you back all of your physical capabilities, means you could go back to playing volleyball, camping, traveling the world. It's like, go back to my life that I loved.
Hmm.
And they say, if I could give all of that back to you, how much money would you pay for it?
Right.
Millions. I mean, whatever, like I would be in debt for the rest of my life if I could have that back.
Yeah, it's because it's that important to you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think we lose sight. We lose sight of we never appreciate what we have until it's gone.
Right.
And a lot of
100%.
times, we don't make changes until we're forced to, and
Right.
that's the unfortunate part of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah. The joke that goes around kind of in my social circles is that there is the discomfort of complacency and there's the discomfort of growth. And you have to choose one. And at some
Yeah.
point, you'll have to grow. You have to change.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, and it just, you have to decide: do I want to stay stuck, or am I really gonna do what it takes and get the help that I need to get
Right.
myself to where I want to be? And that doesn't mean that everything's just all of a sudden going to work out for you. You
Yeah.
might look at me and be like, "Oh gosh, she has it all figured out." I mean, I have credentials, yeah, but I mean, I growing a business is incredibly challenging,
Right.
and to think that, there are some people that all of a sudden they just make millions, whatever, but that's not the normal story.
It's not. It is not the normal story, guys.
And so, to think that, I've got it all together and everything's working out. No, I mean, I've invested $150,000 in different programs to try to get me to where I am, and I still am trying to figure out how to get to where I want to be. So it's like it's life, and
Yeah.
we have to figure out that at no point are we a failure.
Right. Right. And no point whatsoever. Right. We're
It's
humans and we
all a
learn.
part of a growing process, and we just keep growing, and someday something will happen, you'll be like, finally everything fits together.
Mm-hmm.
But it might not ever.
It
You
might not.
might just be growing your entire life, but really and truly the healthiest place that you can be is where you can accept that growth, that it doesn't impact your worth, and that you can find joy in that journey.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Such powerful and true advice. Thank you. Thank you, Whitney. So my last question for you, and I
Yeah.
know we've talked so much advice already, so many skills, so many beautiful things. And for those people just getting into the realm of mental health, those people that just had that, oh shoot moment, right? What advice do you have for those people?
So I mean, I gave a lot of the points that I usually give.
Yeah.
Um, but you've got to start prioritizing you. You've got to start making a mental shift, because most people, we want to be loved, we want to be needed, we want to be worthy. And so we place everyone else and everything else higher on the list than ourselves, because we feel like if we show up for everyone else and everything else, that they'll appreciate us, they'll love us, and then we'll feel worthy. But the reality is that all of those things need to come from inside of you, not externally.
Right.
And so the shift that you have to start to make is a priority shift. You have to start putting yourself as number one. When I usually ask people, what are your top 5 priorities? They never fall on the list. Kids, spouse, work, friends and family, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to start putting me and my health at number one. Take the time to take care of yourself, not just your physical health, but your mental and emotional health. Start making the time for you. Sit in nothingness, if that's uncomfortable. Start spending time with yourself, but really put yourself as number one. Have I taken care of myself today? Did I have time?
Mm-hmm.
Did I make time? And if not, then you need to start saying no to other things.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And it is so true. Right. Yeah, I love it. I don't have anything to add to that, guys. That was a bomb of truth. And if that didn't make sense, go watch it 5 or 6 more times.
No.
Yeah, no, it's true. You have to take care of you, schedule it, right? And if you're not doing it now, start,
Yep.
right? There's no time
The
like the
first step.
present. Yeah,
That's
there's
the
no
first step. And
first
then
step.
you have to be consistent with it, because that's
Right.
change. And
Right.
it'll fall off, and you'll be like, oh crap, and you'll have to bring it back on.
Do it
You just have
again.
to keep it. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just means I'm human, and I
Mhm.
just got to get back to it. And each time you get back to it and get yourself back on track, the fall is going to be less deep,
Mhm.
less devastating, and easier to get out of. And you keep going and you keep growing.
Again and again. And if guys, you fall off and you start to have those feelings of guilt and shame, just remember that meditation that Whitney talked about, where you can just have some self-love for yourself. Right. You can give it both those practices there. Whitney, thank you so much for coming on my show and answering my big 5 questions and just
Yeah,
sharing
no
your
problem.
humanity. And it's been awesome to celebrate you in your life and your skills and your journey and all that kind of stuff. I'm curious to know a little bit more about whole and happy living and where people can get that, where people can contact you if they have more questions, if they want to start your coaching programs, anything like that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is Whole and Happy Living.
Mhm.
My website is mywholeandhappylife.com,
Mhm.
and my Instagram handle is the same,
My whole and
at
happy
my
life.
Whole and Happy Life. Yep. And
Okay.
I didn't even think about talking about this. This is not even the original copy, but I did just publish a book, Self-Love, for women. So any of you women, I mean, it applies to men too, but it's just, specifically talking to women.
That's
Um,
okay.
but that's something, it's something where it's a tool to, the things that we started talking about today of like taking yourself on this mental and emotional journey of really developing, a relationship with yourself. That book will walk you through that. It will walk you through a lot of the steps of recognizing, what you do, the habits that you have, the things, the cognitive distortions, the ways of thinking, the patterns of thinking, that you have that are subconscious. You don't even recognize what you're doing. And that's the biggest pitfall, is that a lot of this is all subconscious and we have no freaking clue what we're actually doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, guys, um, all those links are going to be in the description. So if you guys want to get Whitney's book, please make sure to go get it. Self-Love for Women, men or women alike. Read the book. It's going to be awesome. Guys, check out her Instagram. Definitely go check out her website. Obviously, she is a force to be reckoned with, and she is going to make some massive changes in your life. So yeah, guys, go check her out. Whitney, last time, thank you so, so much for being on my show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for a good discussion.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been fun. And for everyone that's listened up to this point, we are both so incredibly appreciative of you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the story. Thank you for listening to the skills and all of the wonderful things that Whitney brought with her today, because obviously she brought a lot and it was amazing, guys. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you loved the show, please make sure to leave a 5-star review. If you hated the show, please make sure to leave a 5-star review and let us know why. Either way, just leave that 5-star review for us. Um, and just let us know how we did, guys. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Now, before I sign off, just a few things. I'm always looking for guests to come on the show. So if you want to come on my show, please understand that no story is too big, no name is too small. If you have a story, I do want to share it all. So please contact me at chase@thewellnesscenter.life. That's my email, chase@thewellnesscenter.life. We can get you hooked up with a time. If you want to know more about what I'm doing on my day-to-day basis, you can go to www.thewellnesscenter.life, where we use full body red light therapy to recalibrate every single cell in your body, one session at a time. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in again. We both really appreciate it. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys on the flip side. Peace out.